Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Candidate Forum for Issaquah Mayor. I'm Kashif Zahur, a longtime resident of the Issaquah Highlands and president of the Highlands Council Board of Trustees. I'll be moderating the forum this evening. Thank you all for taking time to learn about our candidates and our city's future. And a big thank you to Tim in the back there from the city of Issaquah for handling tonight's sound and video. The full recording will be posted on the city's YouTube channel in the next few days. For the first time in 8 years, Issaquah will elect a new mayor. The outcome of this election will play a key role in shaping our community's future for years to come. Both Lindsay Walsh and Mark Mullett are longtime Issaquah Highlands residents with strong records of public service. We encourage you to listen closely as each candidate shares their views on the issues that matter most to our community. We received many thoughtful questions from residents, and while we can't get to all of them tonight, we invite you to speak with the candidates afterwards if your question is not asked. Before we start, let's go over the format for tonight. We'll start with introductions. Each candidate has 1 minute to introduce themselves and share why they're running. Then we'll move into 3 sections of questions. The first 4 questions will be asked of both candidates. Candidate 1 answers first, candidate 2 follows, and then candidate 1 may offer a short counterstatement. The next 4 questions will be individual questions, each asked to just one candidate. The final questions will be more traditional, with both candidates answering each question with no rebuttal. Finally, we will wrap up with a 1-minute closing statement from each candidate. Time limits for each question have been established and will be strictly enforced. Chelsea Musek, our awesome timekeeper, will be holding a countdown clock for each question. It will turn yellow with 10 seconds remaining and red when time is out. Questions will appear on the screen behind us to help the audience follow along. As a reminder, this is a forum, not a debate. Please focus on your own ideas and avoid targeting your opponent. Are there any questions from the candidates before we get started?
No.
Great. Let's get started with introductions. Each of you will have 1 minute. We flipped a coin in advance to decide the order. And Mark, you will go first, and we will alternate from there for each question. So Mark, go ahead with your intro.
All right. So my inspiration for public service actually started 25 years ago when my dad became the mayor of Tukwila, which was my hometown. And this is actually the building where my first public service role occurred because I successfully ran the Issaquah Highlands HOA board back in 2007. I then got on the Issaquah City Council in 2009 and then ran for the state Senate successfully in 2012, which is the position I held up until January of this year. And outside of my public service role, I own the Zeke's Pizza Issaquah across the street here from 2009 to 2019. I still have 5 Ben & Jerry's scoop shops. I have Zeke's Pizza in Sammamish. I have Alki Coffee Company. We employ over 100 people. We've actually, from day one, have always provided healthcare benefits for our full-time staff. My wife, Kelly, is here. She has been a public school teacher in the Issaquah School District for the last 25 years. All 6 of our kids have gone to Issaquah High School. And my top priorities as mayor is, make sure we make improvements on traffic congestion, maintain public safety, and I just want to preserve the natural beauty of Issaquah for future generations. And I look forward to your questions.
Lindsay, your turn.
Thank you. My name is Lindsay Walsh. I'm the Issaquah City Council president, and I've served on the Issaquah City Council for the last 6 years, the last 3 as the council president. And so anytime the mayor has been out of town, I've been the acting mayor pro tem, and that gives me the experience to be ready on day one. When I learned that Mayor Polly was not running, I really recognized our community was going to need that local leadership and continuity. And so that's why I'm stepping up at this point. My top priorities are going to be improving traffic flow, increasing public safety, and making sure that we have a walkable environment and affordability. I will look forward to having all kinds of conversations about all of the details of those at a later time, but I'm just really excited that we get an opportunity to talk about what is important to the city of Issaquah. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. We will now move on to the questions that allow for counterpoints. The first candidate has 90 seconds to answer, followed by the second candidate with 2 minutes. The first candidate will then have an additional 45 seconds to respond. To start off with an issue that is close to home for many of us, let's talk about the Bellevue College property. For those of you who aren't familiar, it is the 19 acres of undeveloped land in the Issaquah Highlands across from Discovery Drive from Grand Ridge Elementary. This land was purchased by Bellevue College in 2011 with the goal of building a satellite campus. However, the development agreement with the city allows for up to 228 residential units. Shifting enrollment trends, increased online learning, and the high cost of developing a standalone campus has prevented the college from moving forward with the original plan. As the development agreement nears expiration this year, the college is asking the city for a 2-year extension to reassess its options. City Council is currently debating how to move forward, and the final decision will be made before one of you assumes office. How will you ensure the future development of this property reflects the best interest of our community? Lindsay, you're the first to answer. You have 90 seconds.
Yeah. So Issaquah Highlands was developed as a live, work, play environment. And since that initial idea was created, we've had a lot more live that has ended up here. We've had a lot of areas that were going to be commercial or retail spaces that have been converted into residential. And I think housing is important, but this is a particular location that, because it is currently zoned for institutional use, meaning a facility for a school, really provides an opportunity that we don't get very often in this community. And that's looking at some of these larger uses, such as schools. And so that's why I've been talking to the Issaquah School District and the school board about opportunities for potentially using that space and acquiring that space to provide for our overcrowded Issaquah School District schools. I will correct one piece there. The development agreement for the portion that is housing is looking to expire, but they still have 20 years if they want to build institutional use on that. And so this is really a conversation about what do we need in our community at this point. And I think we clearly as a community have said we need schools and other opportunities like that. And I think this is a great opportunity to locate schools near where students are.
Thank you, Lindsay. Mark, you're up. You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, and I think for the people who live in the Highlands, like my Highlands doorbeller, specifically addressed this issue where I said I've been against selling this land to a housing developer from day one. I was on the Issaquah City Council and we did the original deal. It was very complicated. There was a transfer development rights to protect land on Tiger Mountain, and the whole deal was we sold this property to Bellevue College for, I think, about 50 cents on the dollar with the promise of this satellite campus that we thought could partner for healthcare education with Swedish Hospital. And it was really exciting, but when I realized it wasn't moving forward, whenever Bellevue College, when I was in the Senate, would get a new president, I'd make it very clear to that new president, and one of those new presidents was actually Governor Gary Locke, hey, this has to be used for educational purposes. If you guys decide you don't want to use it for educational purposes, the Issaquah School District is constantly on the lookout for potential land for future schools. And I reached out to Superintendent Tawiak, and I think my personal vision for this space was, for one, you have everyone from 15th Street going towards Seattle that has to now go down to Clark or go to IMS for middle school. It's already one of the most congested places in our entire city. And so the goal is to have more housing on the valley floor when light rail gets here in 15 or 20 years. Clearly, we want to get as many residents who are on the hill be able to stay on the hill. And to me, that means you could have another elementary school there. You could also have a middle school there. And I think there's a great opportunity to work between the school district and Bellevue College to facilitate that. And I think, as you said, this is going to be decided in the next 2 months. I think it really has to be clear that if we do an extension, you put something in that extension that makes it clear we don't want this sold to a housing developer. And I think this is one of those issues where I think Lindsay and I, both being longtime residents of the neighborhood, are on the same page, and we want to make sure this land stays educational use.
Thank you, Mark. Lindsay, you have 45 seconds if you want to add anything.
Well, I would just say I'm not sure I understood where you stood on that, Mark, because you said both if you extend it and continue to allow housing, but you also want educational use. I'm firmly in the camp that this is a space that is perfect for educational use, and that is why on November 10th, I will be voting against the extension of this. I've been very clear on that, and that is one of the areas where I do disagree with our current mayor, who has been trying to work for this extension.
Thank you, Lindsay. Our next question continues on the theme of development. The Issaquah Highlands was originally designed as a full-service, walkable, and sustainable community. Over time, the number of housing units has increased from 3,200 to nearly 6,000. Shelter Holdings has already begun development of 21 acres west of Highlands Drive to add over 1,000 new residential units and 325,000 square feet of commercial and retail use. The latest plan for the lakeside development includes housing next to the Issaquah Highlands across from the Park and Ride and View apartments. The proposal does not include traffic mitigation measures. How do you plan to address the need for housing while protecting the quality of life for current residents, including the impacts of increased traffic, with no plans for additional throwaways or evacuation routes? Mark, you have the first answer for this one.
I mean, I think I've always, from my time in the Senate, approached these things from kind of a financial background, which is what I did before doing pizza and ice cream for a living. And I think sales tax on construction, if you're smart in your city budgeting, you isolate those dollars, realizing those are going to be one-time dollars. I think, as you said, there's going to be 1,000 homes from the shelter development that's going to come in, and that'll generate a very large windfall of sales tax on construction. And I think as a city, you have to make sure when you have those one-time windfalls, they're not being used for ongoing departments that are going to have costs going on indefinitely into time, but rather being used on one-time investments. And traffic is a great example of those one-time investments where you make smart decisions. And this is, my 12 years in the Senate, like traffic improvement was my number one priority. And when we added an extra lane on I-90 from here to Bellevue, I put all my political capital into getting Highway 18 fixed so people who live in Maple Valley won't be cutting through Issaquah on their way home every night. We fixed that. We got state dollars to help fix the interchange by PCC and SR 900. On the council, we did the undercrossing by the post office. So to me, you have to make sure that you're prioritizing these traffic investments, because otherwise things will only get worse. And I'm confident through smart budgeting with this project, which is going forward. You can't change the fact this project's going forward now. I mean, this has happened under the last 4 years, and it's going to go forward. And it's just a question of making sure we use the revenue it generates to alleviate traffic concerns throughout the city.
Thank you, Mark. Lindsay?
Yeah, I think that this is one of those cases where we continue to look for opportunities to build more denser housing and walkable areas in areas that are a little bit further away from our hillsides, where there are evacuation routes, where it is easier to get onto freeways and things like that. So I think this is an opportunity to have housing there rather than up here in an area that would increase our evacuation situation. So this is something that we are going to need to deal with. And I do agree, the idea of using the construction sales tax is a great way to have an opportunity to make sure that we are mitigating. We also will get mitigation fees from each of these developments. And so it is very important that when we are looking at our budgeting situation, that we are addressing what the needs are. I always say people don't have a problem with welcoming in new neighbors. What they do have a problem with is welcoming in their cars. And so recognizing that we have a need to understand what are the impacts that our current residents are going to deal with while we add these new neighbors, and understanding that that is our role as a city to take that on and to recognize that there are opportunities that we can do to improve people's quality of life.
Thank you, Lindsay. Mark, you have 45 seconds if there's anything you'd like to add.
Well, yeah, and I think it goes back to this discussion, I think, on the Bellevue College land. I mean, I have been crystal clear. The Highlands has taken their fair share of housing. They have taken it. And it's time for the Valley floor to look at how we can expand housing down there. But I mean, in the Connections article, it asked about this. I specifically said I'm 100% opposed to selling that space to a housing developer because we've already taken our amount of housing. It's on my doorbeller. I don't know how I could be more crystal clear that my focus is it's time to add housing on the Valley floor and say, hey, the Issaquah Highlands has done their fair share of adding housing to the city of Issaquah. And At this point, yes, there's projects that have already been permitted and are going to move forward. We have to mitigate those the best we can. But going forward, it's really a focus of getting smart housing on the valley floor by Gilman.
Thank you, Mark. We can't talk about growth, development, and balancing community needs without discussing the affordable housing situation. We know that housing affordability in Issaquah is a growth inhibitor and an impediment to creating a more diverse and equitable community. At the same time, building more homes increases traffic and places additional demands on our infrastructure. How will you guide the city in addressing the challenge of sustainable growth that balances housing needs with traffic and infrastructure concerns? Where will the funding come from to support these efforts? Lindsay, you're up first.
Yeah, so I think this is an important conversation for us to have as a community. You know, my 16-year-old daughter wants to be a teacher or an occupational therapist. She's not going to make the money that is needed, $300,000 a year, in order to buy a home in Issaquah. That is something that is a big problem for us as a community. And I know that because our police officers, our firefighters, many of our teachers cannot live here. And so this is not only an issue of our kids, but it's also the people who are serving our community every day. I think there are opportunities. Again, I said the problem is not welcoming in new neighbors. We want to be able to have a complete community with our seniors and our family and the people that are providing services to the community. What we need to be able to mitigate is the vehicle traffic and all of that. Looking at it as Redmond and Bellevue have continued to grow, many of their newer residents are actually not bringing in a single vehicle. And so I think we have opportunities when we are looking at smaller housing for a new generation that may not be wanting to use a vehicle, may be more reliant on transportation and transit. And so those are opportunities that we have to address some of those needs. There's a lot about affordable housing that we can do with tax exemptions in order to increase the affordability.
Thanks, Lindsay. Mark? Yeah, our oldest daughter, Isabel, graduated from Western in June, and she's currently living in our basement because Isabel can't afford to live anywhere else in Issaquah right now. And I think this is the fundamental challenge we have going forward, because I think, you know, for me, my first home was a single family detached house. I keep saying to our 6 kids, your first home will not be a single family detached house. That's not a realistic expectation, unfortunately. But the challenge we have in Issaquah is we don't have a lot of, you know, units you can buy that are 700 square feet to 1,200 square feet, but we can create those units. I mean, that is an option, I think, for our community to move forward. And I feel really strongly that the whole valley floor around Gilman, where hopefully is where light rail terminus on the east side is we can create those opportunities. And I think having like the largest permit improvement bill that's passed probably in the history of Washington State was my bill. Senate Bill 5290 was a bill that passed a couple years ago to make it easier to build in the state of Washington the things we need to build. And it was specifically targeting units just like this. At the same time, accessory dwelling units, ADUs, they're really helpful in communities like Issaquah because it gives flexibility to current homeowners if they want to rent out and, you know, create a living unit above their garage. The city should really make that as easy as humanly possible for somebody to build. And I think every time you build an ADU, some people rent them out, but some people move into them and then they rent out their larger house and it's a source of income as they age. And all these opportunities are there for us. We have to have a city permit department that makes it really transparent and easy to navigate how to build in our city. And we really want to encourage units that provide home ownership opportunities in this 700 to 1,200 square foot space. And I think the valley floor is the best place to do that. And I was the chair of our state construction budget. Like, I was the chair of the budget that did the largest investments our state's ever seen in affordable housing. I know how important it is. I think our community in the Issaquah Highlands actually done it really well. And I think we can be an example for the rest of Issaquah going forward.
Thank you, Mark. Lindsay, you have 45 seconds if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I think it's just really important to address the funding for this because we are not the state. We don't have those large areas of money that can be dropped all over the place. The ways that we create this is by encouraging smaller units of development. We also have opportunities for what's called a multifamily tax exemption, which is where we can require a developer to build actually affordable housing at 80% AMI, area median income. And so these are ways that we can create something that is permanently affordable for our community. And that's going to be something that's really important for somebody who's working some of these jobs serving our community.
Thanks, Lindsay. All right, let's shift gears. Here at Highlands Council, we talk a lot about community resilience. This is defined by FEMA as our ability to prepare for anticipated natural hazards, adapt to changing conditions, and withstand and recover rapidly from disruptions. Considering our region's growing climate challenges, earthquake risk, and other emergencies like last year's bomb cyclone, how prepared do you feel for the unexpected? And how do you plan to strengthen community resilience in Issaquah to ensure inclusive, locally driven emergency preparedness strategies? Mark, go ahead.
Well, I will tip my hat to the current administration. I think they've done a good job. The bomb cyclone, I think the city of Issaquah was very responsive to the bomb cyclone. And I know our neighborhood in the Highlands wasn't hit as much as some of the neighborhoods on Squawk Mountain. But I think from going back to my time on the council with the CERT program and all these things where we're really kind of empowering Issaquah residents to get more engaged of how we're going to do emergency response, I think the city's done very well overall. And I think our challenge going forward, as you mentioned with climate change, is the wildland urban interface. We're just right here on the edge of it. I mean, you can look outside these windows here and just realize like we have forested hillsides that but up against thousands and thousands of homes right here. And so I think we just have to make sure that those forests are being managed properly. So if something does happen, it doesn't come through as quickly as, gives us time to react. At the same time, you have these emergency escape routes in some of the hillside communities. And in the Highlands, we have one down by the Montessori School on 15th. And, that was the original entrance to the Highlands. Tallis also has one as well. And I think making sure as we have newer residents, there's a really strong educational effort to say, yes, we have put in emergency evacuation routes in these hillside communities and making sure everyone knows they're there and how to use them if we do have a disaster.
Thank you, Mark. Lindsay?
Yeah, so this is an area I'm very passionate about. One of my first areas of service with the community was joining the Community Emergency Response Team, the CERT team. And so, boy, if you want to learn about all of the emergencies that we face as a city, go take that 6-week class. It really helps you prepare not only your family, but also be able to be there for your neighbors in the case of an emergency. As a community, we were hit so hard with the bomb cyclone, and that was a really big impact. I spent 3 or 4 days down at the senior center, which was our resiliency hubs, working with people who were in there trying to stay warm, trying to make sure that they could charge their CPAP machines, all of these things that we don't think about until the emergencies hit. One of my goals as mayor is going to be making sure that we have one of those resiliency centers in each of our neighborhoods. We've already started the process here with Lakely Hall in making sure that we have an appropriate place that has power in the case of an emergency. We're also starting that process with the senior center in Old Town in order to provide solar and battery power there so that we can provide even more of an opportunity for our community there. I agree on emergency evacuation routes and understanding that we have a responsibility as a community to really look at some of these ways that we can make sure that our residents are safe in the case of an emergency. And so I think there's a lot of things that we can do to make sure that this is a focus for not only our community, but also the city. That's one of the reasons I've been very proud to hire our emergency manager, who actually came from King County, done a phenomenal job, and I really want to make sure that we keep that as a focus for our city.
Thank you, Lindsay. Mark, you have 45 seconds if there's anything you'd like to add.
Well, no, I just would say, I think going back to my time in the Senate, one of the reasons I'm endorsed by the Eastside firefighters, I think this has always been an important issue. I think people, when you have these emergency situations, that's when you want to make sure your government had a plan going in to actually do something. And I do think Issaquah has done a better job than a lot of cities of making sure we have a plan. And this is a place where I think we're kind of on the cutting edge, and hopefully we stay on the cutting edge going forward.
Thanks, Mark. Okay, so now we're going to switch things up a bit. We received some questions that applied to only one of you. We will ask each of you 2 questions, alternating between both of you. You will have 2 minutes to respond to each question. The first question is for Lindsay. Lindsay, you've served on city council since 2019. As you look towards the possibility of becoming mayor, how would you adapt your leadership style and priorities to meet the broader responsibilities of that role while building on your work on the council?
Yeah, and I think that's a great way to put it, is there are additional responsibilities. So we are a strong mayor city. In many of the cities in the state of Washington, the council president or the leader of the council becomes the mayor. In our city, we have a strong mayor, which means that that position is elected separately and has some pretty intense responsibilities when it comes to hiring and firing, putting together a budget that the council then adopts. And so I'm very familiar with that for the last 3 years as I've been the city council president. Anytime the mayor has been out, I've been the acting mayor. And so I've taken on many of those roles in that way. I think I'm also looking at my business experience. So I've been a business owner for 22 years and had to make some really tough decisions during that time about whether or not to pay myself or pay an employee. So I recognize that as a part of the responsibility and something that I will be looking at when pulling together that budget. And then just thinking about my time on council, a lot of the work that I have done as council president has been working to make sure that everyone on council had a voice, that our community has a voice. I know many times people would see me go out into the audience and make sure that somebody knew, yes, it's okay, please come talk to us. We want to hear from you. And I would continue that role as mayor because I think that's an important opportunity just to talk through what it is that our community needs and make sure that they have the connection to our city in that way. Thank you.
Thanks, Lindsay. All right, Mark, for you, you've last served on the city council more than 12 years ago. How would you rate your knowledge of Issaquah's current challenges, and do you feel you would be prepared to lead effectively from day one?
Well, I think that I was on the council, so I think I feel like my unique perspective I bring is not only do I have local city council experience, but I have my experience in the Senate where I had to work regionally with every single mayor throughout the region. And so if I look at the mayors who've endorsed, and that's Snoqualmie, it's North Bend, it's Mercer Island, it's Maple Valley, it's Renton, it's Kent, and all these surrounding communities. And I think that I have this unique perspective, I think, of saying, okay, a lot of our solutions are going to be very Issaquah-focused solutions, and we can solve them on our own by smart public policy on the city council. But a lot of the challenges facing Issaquah are regional challenges, and you're going to have to be able to work with people throughout the region to come up with those solutions. Otherwise, the cost burden on the Issaquah residents is going to be too high. And so I feel very comfortable that not only am I up to speed on these state level issues, but I stayed intimately involved in the city of Issaquah the entire time I was in the Senate. I mean, this is like, when you look at the projects I funded in the Senate, we have, this $3 million affordable housing project by the Transit Center on SR 900. I was involved in that. When we got money so the food bank could buy their building, I was involved in getting that $1 million. When we started the Teen Cafe, I was involved in getting the money to start the Teen Cafe. Like all these, and all the infrastructure projects we already talked about in terms of improvements to that light by SR 900. Like, I can walk and chew gum at the same time. Yes, the 5th legislative district is a large place, but Issaquah is my home. Like, I got money to help turf the fields at Central Park right around the corner. Like, this has been a priority for me of staying in touch with the community where my businesses are located. All my kids go to school. My wife's a teacher. Like, I feel like there was never a point during my entire 15 years of public service where I wasn't in touch with what's happening here. And I think it's just nice to kind of have both the local and the broader perspective. And that's why I'm excited about the race.
Thank you, Mark. All right, Lindsay. Concerns have been raised about using the title Issaquah's acting mayor pro tem in your campaign materials. In fact, a few residents reached out after the latest Community Connect magazine came out, wondering whether you are currently serving as mayor. Please clarify your use of that title and share how you feel your experience with that role informs your qualifications as a candidate for mayor.
Yeah, I think this is a great question. So As the council president, as I said, anytime the mayor is unavailable, out of town, she's been traveling a lot, I step into that role in order to make sure that we have continuity and someone who can respond in the case of emergencies. The official title is Mayor Pro Tem, which I believe is some Latin for temporary or something like that. And I have used the word acting in combination with that because nobody understands what pro tem means. If I just said mayor pro tem, people would think, oh, you're the mayor. But what I'm trying to communicate is just I have the experience of acting mayor anytime the current mayor is out of town. I think that has been pretty clear, but I appreciate the question.
Okay, thanks. Our last individual question is for Mark. Mark, concerns were raised about instances where you may not have strictly followed local regulations. In their questions, residents mentioned parking in restricted zones, setting off fireworks, and accepting early campaign contributions. How do you respond to these concerns, and how will your actions reflect your leadership values if elected mayor?
I think that, the campaign contribution one was, I'm sure, some people may or may not be tracking it, but we both announced our campaigns in December. And so I started collecting contributions at that point. We followed to the dollar, to the penny, the $500 contribution limit, because that was very clear. Issaquah also had kind of a very random limit saying you couldn't start raising money until January of that year. So then there was a complaint filed saying I had prematurely started raising money. As that case went through the process, it became crystal clear from the judge right here in Issaquah that that is constitutionally illegal to say you can't start raising money for a campaign until some arbitrary date, because there's no difference between $500 on January 1st of this year or $500 on December 15th of 2024. And so the judge summarily dismissed that case and said, this is unconstitutional. It is not moving forward. And so I think he was very clear that Issaquah City Council needs to revisit that law, because they have a law on the books right now that is declared unconstitutional in circuit courts throughout this entire country. And so I think that's something that you're going to have to address. But I think the parking, I really do not know what's going on with the parking accusations. If I have parking fines I haven't paid, they're not tracking on my radar screen right now. But I think, I've been a member of this Issaquah community for 19 years. I've been in public office for 15 of those years. I always say, there are no skeletons in my closet. Unfortunately, my life is extremely boring. And it's one of those things where I'm really transparent. So I don't understand, I guess, what people are trying to get at, but I feel like I have been an open book my entire time in public office, and that's going to continue if I am mayor. And it's for better or worse. Sometimes I think I'm really honest and transparent with people, and they're like, wow, I'm not used to elected leaders saying that, but that has been my style, and I just don't see that ever changing.
All right, thank you, Mark. We're going to now transition to our last group of questions. I'll ask each question and specify the time allotment, giving you each the opportunity to respond. So let's now talk about your achievements. You both have dedicated significant years to public service. Looking back, what is the one action or accomplishment that fills you with the most pride for its impact on the Issaquah community? You have 60 seconds for your answers. Lindsay, you're first.
Yeah, I've been really proud to make sure that I was championing a program called MetroFlex. And so this was something that the mayor wanted to cut from the budget. And so I went around to our senior community and to the garage and others who use this program very much. So this is an Uber-like van that runs at Orca levels. So you're using your transit card, youth ride free. This provides 11,000 transit rides throughout the city in an area where we don't have a lot of transit. And so I have championed that as an opportunity to get people who either cannot drive or are unable to, the opportunity to get around town. I'm really proud of that. And in this most recent budget, I am working to make sure that it provides access to the Highlands, because that was originally not part of the deal.
Thank you, Lindsay. Mark?
It would definitely be the transportation investments to this community. And I think from my perspective, there's always been this false choice. So you support road investment or do you support transit investment? And my answer in the Senate and my time on the council is you literally have to support both. Like light rail, we were not on the map in 2015. When Dow Constantine put the first ST3 map, Issaquah was a 0. And I worked in my role as Senate with Mayor Fred Butler, who was on the Sound Transit Board, to make sure that Issaquah got on the map. At the same time, all our traffic congestion in the afternoon was all this cut through traffic. And people kept saying, well, there's nothing we can do about it. We might as well just give up. And I was like, or I can make finishing Highway 18 a priority. So when people actually get in their car and leave work in Seattle or Bellevue to go to Maple Valley or Black Diamond, their navigation system actually takes them to Highway 18. And I believe that's going to happen by Christmas. When that interchange opens, it'll be a really positive difference. So I think these infrastructure investments and making sure that's a priority is what I'm really proud of during my time in public office.
Thanks, Mark. We received several questions centered around education. The new high school in the Issaquah School District has been a controversial issue amongst residents, primarily due to cost and location. How do you plan to support Issaquah's youth, family, and educational programs as mayor while representing the entire community's best interest? You have 90 seconds for your answers. Mark, you're first.
So it was when I was on the council that we actually started this joint meeting between the Issaquah City Council and the Issaquah School District, because at that point they were just very siloed, doing their own separate things. There was not good communication between the two. And what I've noticed in doorbelling thousands of homes in Issaquah this year is the average Issaquah resident really doesn't differentiate between, what's the city government and what's the school district. In their mind, that's local government. They want to see it work, and they don't like when there's these silos and these fights. And so I think your challenge going forward, specifically the new high school, is there was a lot to be learned from those two votes of saying, hey, you have to listen to the community. And it was very clear, I think, that this community is kind of going through some property tax. I think people are feeling taxed out when it comes to their property tax bills right now. And they want to make sure that investments we're going to make in education are thoughtful and really important and are going to move the needle. And I think, we can learn from that as the city of Issaquah of how we move forward in the next thing we ask voters for as well. But I am optimistic that the city can be a partner because the school district has to permit things through the city. And it's not just the school district. I think everything we do as a city of Issaquah to make it clear and transparent how you build in our city, so people actually do want to build things in Issaquah, I think is going to be beneficial to everybody. And doing that for the school district, I think will also lower the cost of building schools here in the future, because I think they're going to have to still be built at some stage. And hopefully we land on a good spot with the Providence Point property.
Thanks, Mark. Lindsay?
Yeah, Issaquah residents support our schools. I think in many cases, people moved here because of the schools. And that includes the neighbors in Providence Point. I think there are a lot of opportunities to love a school. That location has caused some problems. And so I would like to see the school district be able to look at opportunities for taking education forward in other ways, such as a career and technical education or a STEM school, something that could create an opportunity that we need for today's education, not yesterday's. But I'm the city, so my job there is to make sure that we have land opportunities, to make sure that we are able to talk to the school district about what our growth trajectories are so that they can be prepared and have the schools needed so that we are not always in portables and situations like that. So I think it is really important that we have that relationship and that they understand what our growth opportunities are in the city, and that they need to be able to provide the schools, and we need to be able to work with them on land opportunities.
Thank you. Now let's talk endorsements. You both have significant endorsements for your candidacy. What should that mean to voters, and which of your endorsements is the most meaningful to you? You have 60 seconds to respond. Lindsay, you're first.
Yeah, so I have endorsements from many of our local leaders, and I think that talks a lot about my candidacy and where my focus has been. My focus has not been at the state level, it's been right here in Issaquah. And so I have the endorsement of King County Council member Sarah Perry, breaks my heart to say it, but former state senator Bill Ramos, who recently passed away, was one of my mentors and someone who endorsed me early on. our current state senator, Victoria Hunt, and current state representative, Zach Hall. So these, I think, are very important endorsements that really talk to not only what I've been doing and what I've been able to accomplish, but the relationships that we will need to have at the county and the state level. I'm also the only Democratic Party endorsed candidate, and I think that speaks to my values. It's a great way to communicate to voters what I stand for.
Thanks, Lindsay. And for you, Mark?
I think this goes back to the theme I talked about earlier, which is I've always tried to balance the local and the regional support of people I've worked with. And so our current mayor, Mary Lou Pauley, has endorsed me in this race, along with former Mayor Fred Butler, along with former Mayor Rowan Hines. So in terms of people who've been endorsed by current or former mayors, I'm the only one in the race who's been endorsed by current or former mayors. The King County Council, I've been endorsed by Reagan Dunn, and that's primarily because I have a long history of working in a bipartisan manner in public policy space. I mean, Reagan Dunn is a Republican, but he's endorsed me because he's seen that I'm willing to work in a bipartisan manner and work across the aisle. At the same time, the current governor, Bob Ferguson's endorsed me, along with Christine Gregoire and Gary Locke. And so I think, and that also, there's other statewide from Lieutenant Governor Denny Heck and Steve Hobbs, our Secretary of State, and Pat McCarthy, our state auditor. And this is because they've seen how I solve problems. I think the whole thing I want to bring to Issaquah is the ability to solve problems. And those people have endorsed me because that's what I've demonstrated an ability to do during my time in public office.
Thanks, Mark. You both own and operate small businesses. While it's encouraging that small business owners in the community will have strong representation, it also presents unique challenges for you personally. How will you balance the full-time mayor's job with maintaining your business? You have 90 seconds, and Mark, you're first.
Yeah, this is actually one of the most exciting things about the mayor race for me because the Senate was part-time. I mean, it's a part-time legislature. We were in session January through April. So I was literally putting on my suit, driving to and from Olympia every day for those first 4 months. And then the first week of May, you would see me scooping ice cream or delivering pizza because I had to balance both. We have 6 kids. You know, my salary was $42,000 in the Senate when it started. And so to me, this is an opportunity to say, hey, I just want my focus to be one thing going forward. I have been in the restaurant business now for 16 years. I have amazing staff at all 7 of my restaurant locations. And I've spent this entire calendar year empowering those staff to be able to run those locations without me having to be there 5 days a week. And to me, if the mayor thing works out, I don't know. I don't know if I should be happy about this or not, but I don't plan to deliver pizzas anymore or scoop ice cream anymore or be at my coffee shop in Alki Beach anymore. Like, I just want all of my focus for the rest of my time in public service to be on this one job of trying to be the best mayor possible for the city of Issaquah. But in my time in the Senate, I could never use my skills of managing people because we were creating public policy. Like, I ran the state construction budget, billions of dollars, but I could not control the staff in any way, shape, or form. That was Senate committee services. And the mayor role gives you a chance to really use my skills and my background of managing people. And I look forward to being able to use that background to make our city departments have a real small business customer service mentality.
Thank you, Mark. And for you, Lindsay?
Yeah, thank you. So I run a marketing agency, a small consultancy, and so I have also spent the last year ensuring that I have decreased my clientele so that I can step into this. I have a previous employee that has also talked to me about taking on some of those roles. So I have no problem with my time commitment. I haven't worked out of the home in a while, though, so it'll be a little bit interesting going into an office space and making sure of that. But one of the things, because of my 6 years of experience on the city council, I have great relationships with the city staff. And so I've developed those. I have an understanding of how each of our departments are working. And so I'm looking forward to taking a deeper dive into each of those and ensuring that we have the right people in the right places and that we have the customer service mentality really to make sure that our staff know they're there because they are working for the community. And so everything from our police department, who do a phenomenal job already, to our permitting department, understanding what their role is, that is going to be one of the things that I focus on and make sure that I take forward from my business experience into the city role as mayor.
Great, thank you. The city's fiscal outlook for the next 2 years is declining. Budget shortfalls, including layoffs earlier this year, facility funding needs have put pressure on city council and staff. As mayor, How will you address these financial challenges and ensure long-term fiscal stability? Lindsay?
Yeah, so we have a lot of opportunities at this point. Looking forward to some great conversations with the council over the next month or two. We are adopting the public safety sales tax. This was something that the state has allowed us to adopt, which is a 0.1% sales tax, contributing specifically to public safety. So this is going to serve our courts, our police, and it's also an area that I believe we will be able to tap for public facilities. So for those who don't know, our city hall also holds our police station. That was built many, many years ago. And over 10 years ago, we were supposed to turn it over because I don't know if you've noticed, but we've grown as a city in population. So has our police force. And so they need that space to take over. So we have a community conversation to have about how do we fund what is needed for the police station and for a city hall opportunity? How do we go about funding that? And what do we want that to be as a community? I think we have a great opportunity to build something in the downtown area that really allows us to provide needed space for some of our nonprofits, as well as potentially parking for our community. Could be a great opportunity for a win-win, and I think we have opportunities for smart financial use as well.
Thank you, Lindsay. And to you, Mark?
Yeah, we just received a budget update this month. I think I do give the current mayor credit. I mean, there's difficult decisions we made last year, and they did have a reduction in staff because they were like, we don't want to just be running deficits where we're eating into our kind of rainy day fund on the reserve side. And so I think from my time in the Senate, I've seen much more challenging budgets than the one that the city of Issaquah is facing going forward. I think that the public safety sales tax is going to generate $2.2 million a year. And so to me, finding a way to use that to upgrade the facilities for public safety makes a lot of sense. And I would love to find ways to isolate those dollars so they're, invested in that upgrade of the physical space. And to me, that seems like a lot more prudent financially than going out to the voters and saying, hey, we want to run a bond for $80 million. It's going to raise your property taxes again. And I think I just have anxiety about whether that bond would pass. I mean, it'd have to hit a 6% threshold vote. And I just don't think it's super realistic. So I think it is much more realistic to look at some of the money we have in our accounts from buildings we've recently sold, over by PCC, there was a city building that was recently sold, and combine that with this new revenue that's going to start in January, which is going to be substantial, and say, well, what can we do to upgrade our public facility space in terms of public safety first, and then figure out what our options are going forward of how we make sure the rest of the city staff has good places to work.
Thanks, Mark. Okay, now for a fun and lighter question. If elected, what will be your first official act as mayor? You have 60 seconds. You first, Mark.
Okay, I have not thought about that because I'm trying to get to November 4th. But I've been on the council. My dad was mayor of Tukwila. You have to work with the council. And so I think on day one, if I'm successful in this effort, I just want to make sure there's no bad blood from the campaign. I mean, Lindsay will be on the council if I'm successful. This is not an up or out election. And so I've tried to stay really positive this entire campaign, because for Issaquah to be successful, the council has to be successful. And that means my role as mayor is establishing those relationships with the people on the council to make sure that the administration is helping to implement their policy. And yes, you'll have a lot of control as mayor of staff decisions you make of who's in charge of what departments and what their roles are. But it's also really important that you just have to develop on day one a really positive relationship with the council going forward. And that's my hope.
Thank you, Mark. And for you, Lindsay?
Well, I would say talking to the council, but I've been doing that for the last 6 years. So I have that relationship with the council to ensure that we have the opportunity to continue moving forward. We have a wonderful relationship. There's other cities around here that do not. And that has been something that I have been very core about as council president. My first step as mayor is going to be talking to the staff. Really getting into that senior leadership team and figuring out what are they looking at in transition to a new mayor? What are the things that they need in order to serve our community well? What do they think they haven't been given in the past that is really going to be an opportunity there? That this is a great opportunity for us to turn to our staff, who are phenomenal, by the way, phenomenal professionals in this space, and just ensure we can kind of get out of their way and make sure that we can get things done.
Thanks, Lindsay. All right, for our final question of the evening, let's talk about a serious topic impacting our community's health and quality of life. The World Health Organization credits stronger social bonds in communities with improved well-being, fewer preventable deaths, higher rates of education, and better economic resilience. In a June 2025 report, the organization calls on policymakers to treat social health with the same urgency as physical and mental health. Our city and country feel increasingly divided, making local connection and unity all the more important. As mayor, what strategies will you implement to bring people together and lead in a way that rises above politics and other differences to strengthen our sense of community? You'll both have 90 seconds to respond. Lindsay, you're first.
Yeah, the loneliness epidemic. We all separated out a little bit over COVID, and we need to practice coming back together. I think city and local government is a great opportunity to do this. One of the things that I have learned through our budget is many of our parks and recreations programs are actually revenue neutral. And so this is an opportunity where we can say, yes, we can absolutely provide more sports opportunities, more ways that kids can get engaged. But it's also an opportunity for us to take a look at some of these bigger things that we do around the community, such as salmon days, such as Issaquah's Gone Apples, our Downtown Issaquah Association does a wonderful job of, and invest in our community. Because this is a situation where we can really look at if we are able to create events and space for people to come together. Yes, it comes at a cost to our budget, but we are going to end up with stronger community. We're going to end up with stronger businesses, and the revenue from those businesses will also pay back. This isn't a direct connection there, but I think it's a way that we should take a look at where do we invest as a community, and what are our opportunities to connect with community members and make sure they can come together.
Thanks, Lindsay. Mark?
I mean, I love Issaquah. I mean, I moved here in 2006. I grew up in Tukwila, and it's just an amazing, special place. And it's, the natural beauty is part of that, but all the, local community events we have happen is another big reason. And one of the reasons why I chose the Issaquah Highlands is they had developed this Highlands Council format where they're like, we're going to make sure there's constant community events from day one. And that was why I was so excited to become a small business owner with Zeke's and Ben & Jerry's in the community where I was raising my kids, because I felt like I was part of those events as they happen. And so to me, we have a special place. I hate when people say, well, should we be more like Bellevue or more like Redmond? And I'm like, we don't want to be like either of those places. Like, we want to be like Issaquah. This is our unique character we have created here of how you interact socially with your neighbors. And I'm really proud of it. I think, to highlight one point that's really come out to me through doorbelling thousands of homes is I would say 2/3 of our residents are Democrats and 1/3 are probably Republicans. But I will say, as you listen to those Republican voices, sometimes they feel like they're just completely ignored in a city that is predominantly Democrat. So I think the fine line I was proud to kind of balance during my time in the state Senate is I'd have my values around marriage equality and women's choice and protecting the environment that I always held true to, but finding a way so people, regardless of where they fall in the political spectrum, feels like their local community is listening to their concerns and making them feel welcome. I think Issaquah can find that balance going forward. I'm very optimistic.
All right. Thank you, Mark. All right. Now it's time for closing comments. The candidates will have 60 seconds each. Mark, you're first.
And I think I mentioned this when we started. This was local public service wasn't on my radar screen when I was growing up. Like, I graduated from college, I did finance. I lived in London and New York for a long period of time, for 12 years. My dad became the mayor of Tukwila back in 99. So he was mayor for 8 years. It literally changed my entire life of really hitting me like a 2x4 over my head that this is one of the best ways you can have a positive contribution on your community is to get involved in local public service. And when Mary Lou Pauley told me she wasn't going to run again, I was like, this is the most exciting opportunity I could ever have. And I think, as Lindsay mentioned, it was tragic when Senator Bill Ramos passed away unexpectedly in the spring. And I probably took 50 or 60 calls of people saying, Mark, aren't you going to run for your old Senate seat? And I was like, 50 or 60 times. I said, no, the job that I want to finish out my entire time in public service is right here, being mayor of the town where I plan to spend the rest of my life. I love it here. I'm really excited about the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark. Lindsay?
Yeah, I think the message I want to end with is this isn't about me. This is about you. This is about the community and what I can help us achieve together. When I'm looking at what our needs are as a community, I look at the community survey. I look at our strategic plan. I look at the conversations we've had as a community and understand we have some real issues with traffic, with affordability. We need to make sure we are ensuring public safety. And so my focus isn't about the role or what kind of places that I can do. It's about what I can achieve for the community. And so as I'm looking at that, I would encourage anyone to reach out to me. All of my contact information is on my website, and I am looking forward to having conversations so that we can take things forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Lindsay. I want to thank both Lindsay and Mark and all of you for joining us tonight or tuning in from home. You should have received your voter pamphlets and ballots in the mail. Don't forget to check out the candidate guide in the latest Community Connect magazine to learn more about all the races on your ballot. And remember to drop your ballot in the box outside Issaquah City Hall by Election Day, November 4th. If mailing in your ballot this year, they recommend sending it by October 28th to ensure your vote is counted. If you have any remaining questions for the candidates, please feel free to stay and chat with them until 8:30. And before signing off, I wanted to just have a special thank you to the Highlands Council staff. Lindsay Pinkston, our executive director, does amazing work. Maddie here in the front row, Carol and Betty, who just joined. You guys do amazing work and made this event possible. So thank you to all four of you.
I think your ballot still counts as long as it's postmarked by November 4th. But yes, you're right. They want to encourage you to mail it in earlier, but it still counts.
Please make sure to sign it. Otherwise, it doesn't count.
Yeah, no, thank you for those reminders, both of you. Thank you for joining us. Everyone have a great night. And thank you again to the candidates.
Thank you, Kelsey.
Very nice.